So, here we are. The title of this panel, and it's arguably going to be one of the most important panels that we have tonight, probably the most important, it's Envisioning the Future of Blockchain and Psychedelics. Envisioning the Future of Blockchain and Psychedelics. So this is about where we're going in the future with these technologies, with spiritual technologies, with blockchain technologies, with the love that we have from both of these seemingly disparate fields. Blockchain, yes sir. So how I want to start this little shindig off is by getting the panelists. Well, actually, I'll introduce the panelists this time. So we have here with us Matt McKibbin, who is the founder of DecentraNet, the founder of D10E, but probably most importantly, he's the founder of CryptoPsychedelic. So he is the glorious avatar of the whole movement here. So an interesting thing about Matt is tomorrow he will be 1 billion seconds old at 10:12 p.m. and 40 seconds.
Woo! 1 billion seconds.
Right.
That's why I have a comment about that when we're done. But I'll talk about it later.
Sure. Okay, now we have our other distinguished panelist is Khaliya, who has been involved in both the crypto and psychedelic worlds as an advocate for psychedelics.
Happy birthday.
And whose
Thank you.
And whose op-eds have appeared in the New York Times, Wired Health. She's also recently featured on CNN Money, and she's talked MDMA for PTSD on CNN Money. On the crypto side, she is the director of partnerships for Guardian Circle, soon to ICO a token named Guardian. An avid humanitarian, she is the winner of the Middleton Candler Peace Prize, and I missed that one.
Humanitarian of the Year Award.
International Service. She is currently the youngest member of the WEF Futures Council for the Future Health and Healthcare. Woo! Give it up. Give it up for Khaliya. Khaleesi. We also have here with us on our panel Merete. Merete, okay. I'll be allowed a few errors. So she's the executive manager and the assistant to Rick Doblin for MAPS. She's an integral part of the executive team there. She assists Rick Doblin and acts as an outreach manager for MAPS. She's been a crypto enthusiast since 2011, so she is thoroughly enmeshed in both fields. And my guess is that she's been a tremendous influence on the MAP teams for getting cryptocurrency involved.
Yeah.
Give it up. And next on the list here we have Brian Norman, who's the co-founder of Psymposia and CryptoPsychedelic. So he's a co-founder of this conference. He has a bachelor's degree in plant, soil, and insect science from unassuming Amherst. In 2012, he was raided and arrested for cultivating cannabis and psilocybin, which resulted in civil asset forfeiture with the help of his lawyer. He got off and went to co-found Psymposia. This guy and I have quite a bit in common already. He's an advocate for the future use of psychedelics for suicide prevention and currently focused on thinking about new ways to expand the psychedelic and drug reform communities outwards to include new stakeholders and making these topics easier for mainstream conversation. Especially with his dad and his 87-year-old grandfather. Grandma, sorry, excuse me. So let's give it up for Brian. So one of the important pieces of this discussion, I think that's close to everybody's hearts and has been touched on a myriad of times since we began this beautiful event, is this idea that as we move into the future, there's going to be more people interested in maybe having different kinds of controls and regulations over this particular space that we're in. So it's my hope that looking into the future, we can have the panelists today really elaborate on where we're going with this in terms of people who want to try to control the direction of both cryptocurrency and psychedelics. So what do you guys make of it? What's going on?
Okay, well, yeah, so these two fields, I think, are very intertwined, and we're learning about exactly how intertwined they are and they've been over the past, even 6 years. I think there's a lot of people that can think outside the box because of psychedelics and thinking about new systems of money, new systems of governance, and how we build incentive structures are things you can't be thinking inside the box about. You can't be saying, oh, I'm going to design a new system, yet I'm going to use all the same tools, the same structures of the old system. And so in the future of what we're going to be doing here, we can use blockchain technology, we can use cryptocurrency, we can use the new methods of funding what we want, directing resources at what we want, we decide with this open source money, to things we know that's going to improve the world. And so far, we've seen, I think there's a massive amount of evidence that psychedelics are a massive positive impact on humanity and its psyche and its ability to heal itself after its traumas. And so directing those resources, directing cryptocurrency, tokens, however you want to fund something, whether it's just donations or whether it's actually issuing a new organization via a token and the governance rules, is going to be vastly important in our ending of the drug war and the prohibition on psychedelic substances.
Yeah, and I would even piggyback on that, Matt, and say, too, that blockchain and cryptocurrencies have a huge opportunity to influence, I know this is great, have a huge opportunity to influence psychedelics, too. I mean, look at, in December alone, over 100 Bitcoin were donated to MAPS, and that was equivalent of over $2 million at that time, and that helped us really make progress in closing the gap that we have for funding. So we're seeing like real-world applications for cryptocurrency to enact change in the world in surprising ways that we might have not thought of before.
Go ahead.
It's hard to concentrate.
I know, more blinky lights.
It's super hard.
Or you guys just rave instead.
Right? What's the proper role of regulation? Is there what's the most sensible amount of regulation that we can have in it? And I think it's fascinating that within crypto space, you guys are having the same conversations that we're having in drug reform. What's the proper role?
Yeah.
And I mean, the proper role, I mean, the old systems of regulating very top-down, centralized ways of making decisions, of coming to a consensus. And I think the new structures will need to be built in parallel. So we have these old ones, we kind of have to follow certain rule sets or we get thrown in prison. Do those, don't get thrown in prison, right? That's not a good way of moving the world forward, really. But we need to build, just like this financial system, where we're kind of building, the old financial system is really sick. It's really untransparent. It's actually dying. There's massive amounts of debt. It's really, really dying and decaying. And that used to be really scary. But now that we have this new system of being able to build a societal infrastructure on through networks and individual sovereignty and over one's body, one's mind, one's data, one's money, I think those are the only rules that matter in the long run for the regulation of these. I see the rules right now when we have certain regulation sets, we kind of follow the old Westphalian nation state model of having, like, I can literally have a line in the sand or a river, and one side of that I can sit there and I could smoke a joint, and the other side I would be arrested for that. I would be thrown in prison. Violence would be enacted upon me for sitting there and doing that. That method, and those lines were drawn because they couldn't arbitrarily conquer the people on the other side of that line. So okay, listen, let's just draw a line. Okay, right? And now we are going to kind of make those rules and regulations kind of borderless. They're going to be on the internet. And that's how we're going to govern ourselves. So I think that the rule sets eventually through for cryptocurrency or for psychedelics will then be on whatever rule set you then subscribe to, and it won't necessarily be that old one.
And I mean, coming in from both the psychedelic side and the crypto side, I mean, I came into psychedelics because of the fact that it could do something that nothing else could do with respect to brain injuries and trauma. And there are so many people in this world right now that are suffering that it needs to be something that is deregulated, that is available to all. It's a human rights issue. So that was one side of the equation. The other side of the equation was that's the end game. These are people that are already hurt. How do we fix them? But how do we stop people from being hurt in the first instance? Mm-hmm. And that's where I became involved in crypto. I became involved in an app called Guardian Circle, whereby you declare people your guardian angels, and they can protect you in the instance of a, not even necessarily a public emergency yet, like a personal emergency, but even you just don't feel safe. So rather than waiting until it's too late and then dealing with the aftermath, you can say, I'm going into a Tinder date and I don't feel safe, or I'm walking down a parking lot and just feels weird, I don't feel right. Hey guys, this is where I am, and it geolocates you, which 911, by the way, does not 90% of the time, and takes about 40 minutes. So, in this instance, not only are you you're not waiting for this amplified disaster response kind of situation, but you're doing it to make yourself feel better and really, empowering the crowd, empowering the collective to protect each other in a way that I think increases in community engagement. So Guardian was a tokenized system that was developed to actually amplify the power of that network, so that not only would it just be your friends and the people that you know, the people that have accepted to protect you, but actually you could have a double-tiered system, one of which was 4-pay system, which had EMTs, which has government institutions that are available but maybe offline at that moment, able to come and help you in a time of need. And because of the fact that right now 911 systems are not only available to 4 billion people, but half of the world's population have no private security systems, or in some cases, if you call the cops, you're worse off than if you hadn't. Like, for example, if you're a woman in India and you call the cops, the likelihood is you'll be raped by the very people that are coming to save you. So in this circumstance, I saw a problem, which is, I don't want to be dealing with so many people with PTSD. I mean, MAPS has been incredible at empowering people, at finding a new solution. But why do we have to get them to the point of pain before we can then try to reverse the process? No, we can stop it before it starts. And I think that's where Guardian really uses the power of the collective and uses the power of decentralization to enable an emergency response network that we've never seen before. But that is a problem that needed to be solved, that needs to be solved. So that's how I end up on both sides of this coin, quite literally. Thank you.
And I think we've been talking a lot today about governance, rules, and how and who gets to decide those, how we create access to those, for people to have the ability to be a part of those conversations, to be a part of the framing of it. I think that in this case, we talk a lot about scalability too, and I really think that that's another place where psychedelics can influence this blockchain and cryptocurrency technology. Maybe psychedelics are part of the key to us fixing some of this scalability issue, looking at these things from a new light or a new perspective, with different barriers than we do in our normal conscious state.
I'd like to piggyback on that, which is just that, in one of the last panels, Linnea mentioned that with LSD, you have an amount of connectivity in your brain that we've never seen before. Mm-hmm. And this is important because actually a lot of times when it comes to a survival type instinct, we end up in the limbic system, which is the most unevolved part of our brain. And most of us in daily life are really in the limbic system. But psychedelics allow us to actually access all parts of our brain, which means we're essentially evolving ourselves, which enables us to think in not just a more forward-thinking manner, in a more humanitarian and integrated manner, but it means that we're not just thinking 10 years from now, we're thinking 100 years from now. And so disabling that limbic system via psychedelics, I think, will help us evolve as a species, because it enables us to think further than our immediate future of needs in terms of what is actually our purpose. So, for example, Aristotle, his version of happiness is based on two things. devotion to a people or to a purpose, so a community or some larger belief system. I think most of the people here tonight are here because we have both. We believe in the fact that we have the power to change the world, and we believe in our community. And so we have that eudaimonic happiness. We have what Aristotle thought was essential for our progress as a species. And how do we harness that? I think blockchain is the way, because it gives us a decentralized way of really figuring out what is it we want to achieve and how can we do it. If it's emergency response, then okay, we find a token for that. If it's getting rid of government regulation, okay, this is one way around it.
So
what
this is
else do we want to
psychedelic
achieve?
advocacy,
Yeah.
maybe even. Psychedelic advocacy.
So,
Yeah.
I would just
Well-
challenge everyone to see, what is it they're trying to achieve? Because we can vision that and we can manifest it, because now we have tools we've never had before.
This was one of my fundamental questions coming into this, was asking the blockchain people, how do you end the war on drugs with blockchain? Because that's what...
The answer is yes.
So,
Well, yeah,
I can-
I mean,
we can-
that
we've
that's
got
what's
some ideas.
preventing. I mean, and that's what's suppressing a lot of everything on the psychedelic side. Is it's the war on drugs. It's prohibition. We're in prohibition, and it's an invisible thing that a lot of people don't know it's there. It's just the paradigm that they live in.
so there's a couple different ways. So we've had some in-depth discussions about this over the past couple days, just being here, because this is what's on our mind. One way we've kind of discussed a little bit, but if we go over what a DAO was, a decentralized autonomous organization.
A little bit.
A little bit? Maybe I missed that part of it. But the decentralized autonomous organization, the first one was Bitcoin. That was the first one that ever existed. And it broke down the game theory implication. It broke down the ways of people cheating how a decentralized or how an organization would work together without having to trust the participants in the center. So what the general's problem was with Byzantine, Constantinople, whatever problem. And so that was the first DAO, and now we're creating more and more and more. We're figuring out the models to create the incentive structures for more DAOs that solve a specific purpose within society. We can say, this community wants to solve this purpose, these are the rules by which it operates, and these are the incentive structures for it to do so. Go, right? And then you can submit projects to do a proof of impact. So I think that one way to end the drug war through these would be to create a psychedelic advocacy decentralized autonomous organization, or DAO or DAC, that its purpose is to continue to spread and put resources into humans and projects that, one, destigmatize it from the 40, 50 year war on drugs and its propaganda. Two, then support the communities to start around to keep talking about that. And three would be really to defend those who have been the victims of defend and heal with the clinic centers, to heal those types of people. So a public defender DAO would be a really awesome organization, right? If we could incentivize people to actually go be public defenders and make a ton of money doing so, we would have a lot more public defenders for the little guy, the little girl. So those are kind of things that this organization, which I think you all should join after this, once we figure it out, we'll have an ICO one day, should do. And I'm sure there's many more things and many more smart people to figure out what it needs to do as
Do you
well.
have a response?
No, go ahead.
I have a comment. So, I mean, a lot of what we've been talking about today, too, is this idea of the change coming from within the community. So I think that a way that blockchain or crypto people can help shift, or the technology can shift where we are with the war on drugs, is by helping fund organizations who have been on the ground doing the work against the war on drugs
Yeah,
for
that's
like
the
years
obvious
and years
one,
and
right.
years, you know?
Right.
And now having people who before didn't have capacity maybe to do these things.
Right, and the other thing that we talked about is the current, incentive system in policing, which we all know is a complete disaster. It's
Yeah.
backwards. It's upside down. It's completely upside down. I live in Baltimore, and it's just like a picture perfect laboratory on how to do it all wrong and how to continually do it wrong. Complete top-down approach. The community relations with the police are the fucking worst that they could be. So, how do we change the incentive? Can you use blockchain to change the incentive system in policing? So, one former police officer, and I was telling you guys this before, policing in a certain neighborhood that doesn't have too much crime, but so then they make crime up. So then they go arrest people for spitting or jaywalking. That was the example that he used. Because if you don't get enough arrests, if you don't do more of this, if you don't have your quota, you don't rank, so they have to make up crime. And then there's the whole overtime structure that goes into that. I was talking to someone, another former cop, and he was saying, because I asked him, how much does, say for marijuana arrests, how much is an average police officer? How much can you make through overtime? He's like, look, when I used to be a cop, if I wanted to, buy an extra car a year or something like that, I just, every week you can go sit by the nearest bar and just pull a bunch of DUIs over. And I think that's what's going on with marijuana and all these other things right now. They're incentivized to do it. So can you use blockchain to flip that in some way? I think it's worth exploring.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And actually what Guardian Circle is trying to do, what Guardian is trying to do, is to make it so that, Good Samaritans are actually rewarded for their actions, so that even off-duty cops, if they do the right thing, they can get tokens that will make it so that if their family is in trouble, they can get access to help sooner. So it's really, what is it that we value most, and how can we make that a value that is actually tradable, that is worth something? Because it hasn't been till now, but it can be.
And so to piggyback on that a little bit, yeah, so the incentive structures within the state system currently are that the state and everyone else profits when violence or property destruction happens. So when you go and destroy someone's car and then they find them and then they find them and they get the money, they're profiting, they're getting money when there's property damage and there's violence. So what we need to do in a lot of senses is flip that incentive structure and say, let's say instead of you make money when there's peace. So everyone's making money when there's peace, when there's not property damage, when there's not destruction and violence. People are making money. The prison system definitely makes money when people are arrested and put into the system. So we want people making way more money when everything is at peace and when no one's having property destruction versus that. So that is one way, one application, I think, of a defense insurance model, of a justice guardian model, whatever you want to call it, of flipping those incentive structures within society to ensure. But also another model would be something like, she said cops, but we said if you were to put that person who would normally be arrested and put into some state system, which is going to fuck their life, drugs will ruin your life, so if we catch you using them, we'll ruin your life, right? It doesn't make any sense. But instead of that, put them into a rehab center or put them into a community development center or something like that, and then they earn a token to do just that instead of putting them into the state system, which ruins their life.
I mean, we also need to shift the perspective that, not all drug use is bad, drug use. There's certainly, misuse and abuse of drugs, but, there's also non-problematic drug use that happens all over the world all the time. And it's the vast majority, yeah. And so, shifting the paradigm about education that we have about these substances and how they're used, same thing with blockchain. And, something we talked about too, I really liked, I can't remember who said it earlier, but underthrow rather than overthrow, coming up, through the bottom, through the center and out. And, that's really been MAP's strategy over the last 30 years with the leadership of Rick Doblin, is he recognized that the system was too broken to rail against it. And what he did instead is he went in through the system and started trying to shift it from the inside out. So recognizing that politics were in the way of like reasonably arguing with somebody that this should be studied scientifically. And so studying that, ecosystem and learning how you can shift public policy and public opinion through advocacy to be able to move the science forward. And I know we mentioned earlier too the shift that happened within the FDA in the 90s with the pilot drug program. And now again too, in I think it was 2012 was when the breakthrough therapy drug program was first brought back in the FDA, and which allows drugs that have like a very high need and high promise to be able to move through the process that much faster in closer collaboration with the FDA. And excitingly, MAPS was granted this breakthrough status just this last year, which is a huge thing. Like we almost didn't apply for it because we were so sure that the FDA wouldn't grant this designation because it's such a public endorsement essentially of saying we believe that this is going to make it through and we want to help make that happen.
Yeah.
Well, they kind of have to at this point because they have no.
You can't really argue with the
They have
data.
no. I mean, they have nothing that's effective for PTSD.
Yeah, it's proven to do something that no other drug in the market can do, which is technically what makes it a breakthrough status, which is why it got it and why it should have gotten it, frankly, a long time ago. But I'm really happy you guys applied. And but what I wanted to mention was that I feel like there's two conversations here. One is like dystopia, and basically that's where we are right now. Drugs are criminalized, people are being arrested. If you're a part of a certain kind of community, you're more likely to be arrested. You come out of a bar and they're just going to find something on you. They're going to plant it. This is what's happening. But then there's also the utopia that's out there. This is what we're here for, people. It's because we have this opportunity to do something different with what we have, with the tools that we have. And I feel like that's the utopia we should really concentrate on, because once we focus on that, the rest becomes noise. Because if we can make it so that we're incentivized for the kinds of purposes and meanings that we want in this world via decentralized systems, these kinds of issues would disappear. If cops are not incentivized to actually break the law, and most cops do not start out bad, they start out good. They want to do something good, and it's a system that only rewards bad behavior, just like a lot of other systems. So if we can change that system, and now for the first time in a long time we have the opportunity to do that, then we can change these problems and they will disappear. Buckminster Fuller said, don't fight forces, use them. And I believe in what you had said, which is, it's going from the under up. We can subvert the forces that are already there to our own purpose if we just use them. They already have a power and they're pushing. How do we channel that? How do we use that? That's what I think is in the vision for our future.
One of the conversations that I had about the advocacy portion, like the destigmatization in this, is that there was someone who was in the military, I would say prominent person in the military, who had opioid addiction and was some of the things, and did psychedelic treatment. I think it was Ibogaine. And now that if you can flip the tide and say, look, we have a lot of veterans, we have a lot of people with PTSD, we have a lot of people that are addicted to or using antidepressants for all these things, and we now have these breakthrough treatments that treat them. If you do not support all of those humans who have been through massive trauma in wars, getting these substances to be able to do that, you don't support the troops, which is a very, very large contingent of humans that is very powerful, especially in the United States. Those are the types of groups, that the politics, as you say, that you can push. And I think that's really important.
Yeah, the veteran community has been a huge ally for the work that we're doing.
Yeah, all I hear
Huge
about
ally.
is Navy SEALs and everybody else with MDMA now.
Yeah.
But if you think about it,
And we need to move, it needs to move out. It needs to move. Okay, we've made that step now. So whatever the statistic that you hear all the time, 22 a day or suicides a day. Okay, that's just in one little group.
Yeah.
So what about all the people who are not military? is a lot more.
Yeah, and I mean, there's often a misconception, I think, that the studies that MAPS are doing is only for veterans or only for service people,
Right.
whereas in reality it's PTSD from any cause.
Right.
You know, there have been some studies that have focused in specific populations, and one of those specific populations was, excuse me, adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse, which I think is, you know, one of the most important areas of focus that we can look at, because these are people who've been carrying their trauma around for their entire lives. And I think oftentimes too, you know, we're dealing with complex treatment-resistant post-traumatic stress too. Like, that's not from one instance. That's a lifetime of trauma. And you know, I think something that's really important to bring up too is, you know, how do we get these things out? Because I know for me, like, if I'm going to a therapist who I don't resonate with, who I feel like can't understand me and where I'm coming from, like, I actually come out of that experience feeling worse than I do going into it. And so how do we empower people who are already doing this work in their communities to learn about these tools, to understand how that they can be used, and to be able to take them and do them in their own communities, you know, because we can't.
Yeah.
But I would say, I mean, as a collective, you know, 1 in 3 women is the victim of rape or sexual assault. 1 in 10 people right now is on some kind of antidepressant. 1 in 5 of you is engaging in some sort of behavior because of some underlying trauma. So you take those facts and you think, okay, as a society, we're going a little, like, you know, pear-shaped. Well, it makes sense why. Because a lot of us are hurting. If we can heal that fundamental problem that we're dealing with, then we have a clearer way forward. And so I would say, you know, 7 out of 10 people with 16 years of treatment-resistant depression can recover from 3 doses of MDMA for PTSD. That is astonishing. That is something that could change the way that the world works, because if we can heal all of these people that are injured, we can heal a system that's based around injury. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's what we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, this is a very awesome discussion. This is one of those particular discussions that we could probably go into all day. I wanted to add, I heard earlier the panelists elaborated on this idea with police, of course, the incentive structures being completely undermined by the way that the system is set up, but it's also set up purposely to go against ordinary people. The Supreme Court had already ruled that police officers don't have any obligation to protect anybody in society anyway, so we see the skewing happening at the highest levels of government. But that's just one interesting piece of this whole puzzle about how we're going to move into the future, and where we're going to go with blockchain technology and psychedelics. I want to switch gears a little bit and get the panel. This is something we all kind of discussed a little bit earlier and has been kind of ongoing, but looking into the future, one of the things that is going to still be intimately important in the psychedelic sphere is crypto funding. Crypto funding has been extremely important. She realized there's been a lot of help with maps from the crypto community. And so let's look into the future, guys, and think about how we're going to continue to fund the projects that we want to fund. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about maybe anonymity in funding. Let's talk about projects. Yeah. What does the future look like in this area?
Awesome. So I don't know, probably many of you here have heard of the person behind the Pineapple Fund. So this is an anonymous donor who put over, I think it was 5,067 Bitcoin into a wallet that they plan to use to distribute to fund causes that the community, you know, and they thought were important. MAPS was one of the first 8 organizations to receive funding from this person, and received, you know, equivalent of $1 million. And then, like, amazingly enough, just this last month, they offered to make a $4 million equivalent dollar-for-dollar matching grant to MAPS for the phase 3 trials.
Yeah.
Go Pineapple Fund.
So donate to MAPS now.
Well,
yes.
if we meet this, we will have funded all the estimated costs to complete these phase 3 trials over the next 5 years, and then MDMA-assisted psychotherapy would be a legal treatment available in the US, and then soon to follow after Canada, soon to follow after Israel, and then hopefully Europe, and then hopefully South America, and there's already plans for Asia too. So like globally, we're working to have this treatment available in, to use a buzzword of the day, borderless way, so that no matter where you are in the world, no matter what trauma you're suffering from, you're able to access the tools that you need to heal.
Seriously,
Yeah.
thank the cosmos for these people right here and the work that they're doing.
Pineapple Fund. They're sponsored, They're on the site. The secret pineapple people definitely sponsored.
If
I
you're here,
promise.
thank you. We love you.
You must
Whoever
remain
you are, we
anonymous,
love
though. That is important.
Yeah.
The Pineapple Fund must remain as anonymous as Satoshi Nakamoto. Okay? This is
Yeah.
a really, really important thing. They cannot be known who they are. So if you ever find out who they are, it's a secret. Burn it. Proof of burn.
Do you guys have any more thoughts on potential with funding?
I mean,
Well-
go ahead.
No, you go.
Oh, me go. I talked a little bit about how you could fund different types of tokens that had a different aspect. There was one that was a consciousness coin. There was a bunch of other ones that can fund and incentivize different structures. I think that that's coming more in 2018, 2019 with a lot of the governance protocols. There's going to be kind of like the WordPress of DAOs that come out. DAO Stack is one of them. It's one of our clients. But that makes it really simple to start a decentralized organization and throw up whatever rule sets you want, and then anyone in the world that has a cell phone and a cryptocurrency wallet and an internet connection can join your decentralized organization. And so I think that those, even individual research projects, you could crowdfund a research project with a token or with just a donation platform kind of to fund one specific rule set. Another one, I don't know, I talked about the maps. I don't think we should talk about the maps licensing thing, but it's a crazy idea that I had. Okay, yeah. I won't talk about that. But one day. And so I think that cryptocurrencies and psychedelics will definitely be able to fund because we can direct resources regardless of what the pharmaceutical companies and government funding does.
Yeah. So in with Psymposia we do mostly advocacy. We do shit like this. We meet up with Matt and we do these events because we are like looking to kind of expand it into other areas. I get a little bored going to research conferences at this point. I don't need any more science to convince me. I get it. Yeah, these have been used for whatever 10,000 years. Okay, great. This is common sense if you're into ethnobotany or anything. Okay, it's like it's nothing. Okay, So I think the focus needs to be on action, advocacy, and kind of moving. Okay, we use the science now to how do we change public opinion now? How do we make it totally non-taboo for a company to like come out and say, yeah, we support psychedelic therapy. It's like this is easy. It's not. It's like so easy to talk to my dad about it and how he like gets it. It's easy. It's all about how you present yourself and I mean it only is going this. How it's going to change is one conversation at a time. That's how it actually changes, I think.
Yeah.
I think.
But it's important to be strategic. Like, when I did
Certainly.
the op-ed for the New York Times on breakthrough therapy using MDMA for PTSD, I was very strategic. I said only the New York Times, because that's the only way that people will accept this as something that is now a normative conclusion. It is not, in some
we
friend,
are the
it's
culture.
it has been accepted. It's passed by scientists. And it was part of the game, which is not just how many moves you can make, but what is the best strategic chess move that will make it so that we pass a tipping point where we're no longer fighting. We're not fighting. We are in the flow of something that's moving forward. And so I just keep thinking, not what I can fight against, but what tide will help bring us where we need to go. What is the most powerful thing we can tap into to get to where we need to be? And I feel like with blockchain, you have people jumping on ICOs left, right, and center. And so I've talked to Rick about this before. I still believe very strongly that we should have an ICO for funding of psychedelics. If anybody wants to talk to me about this, I am all ears and behind it 100%.
For sure.
So consider it, a bet down on the table. Anybody who wants in, come and talk to me. But further than that, it's, what does everybody want? Figure out what it is. Figure out what is the river that can take you there, and don't fight. Figure out where that is flowing and get on that river.
I think there's a lot of awesome people here doing work that is not in research that, they know what to do. They already know it. They're in the audience, all here right now. They know what to do. And I think a lot of it is focused on education, on strategy, like you said. How do we talk about it in a way, it doesn't approach it with like any stigma in the first place.
Yeah.
Because there's
sometimes I feel like it's almost like looking at slavery back in the day, that there's this normative tipping point where, it's just everybody knows it's happening, they know it's wrong, but they're not doing anything about it. And it's just a few people staking their claim, some people doing the Underground Railroad, making sure that people's voices get heard, and then suddenly it's bad, and everybody knows it's bad, and it's been a normative change. And so for me, I feel like psychedelics needs that tipping point normative change, and I feel like we're close.
I think we've already
We're really close.
It is. It is an institution that, so it is like slavery. Slavery is an institution that's immoral. We all kind of agree.
I think
slaving people is
tipped.
moral, right? But I'm saying then there are other institutions within society that need to then have progressive progress that come through. Banning psychedelics or normalizing psychedelics is one of them. Women 100 years ago couldn't wear a bathing suit that didn't have legs.
Barely even vote.
Right? Couldn't even vote. Right? So institution, that is an institutional change. That is an actual institution. And that's a top-down institution, the state institution that implements whatever rules are the normative at the time, right? But when we have decentralized consensus come from the ground up, it's not something that's just whoever's in charge gets to make those rules. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of those things. So
but I would add just one thing, which is that we have this phenomenon going on right now, which is that everybody wants to jump onto whatever ICO, even if it's a shitcoin. FOMO. So why don't we create purpose, value-based coins that actually embody our belief systems? Because people will be just as likely to jump on them as some kind of shitcoin, and then we can accomplish our goals.
But we don't want to have.
We can actually take the kind of money that's coming from Wall Street and use it for the things that we want, which is to create a better society in the end.
And so this leads us to like governance, and if that was there, and Merete, you've been talking about equity in that.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of, I want to come back to that, but I also want to say too, looking really towards into the future, like the potential for blockchain technology to help us in the regulation and control of substances, so that we don't have to have a central governing body necessarily doing that. We can see the supply chain, the control of custody of these substances. We can use the technology possibly to help us guarantee the purity and quality of a substance. We can use it to help verify the qualifications of the people who are administering treatment, whether it's like a peer review system or whatever else it may be. As we're building these structures, as we're building these new institutions, having this, Liana kept using the word, we were talking about this last night, it came up, malleable. The future really is malleable in this moment here with these emerging technologies, and I think one of the most amazing things about this is recognizing how many women are at this intersection of cryptocurrency and psychedelics. Like, how cool is that? There's all of this opportunity, all of this space, and we're in a time and place where women can really step into their own as empowered individuals in this space. And unlike the rest of the tech field, so many of the new projects that are coming into this space have women involved in them, have people of color involved in them. And I think that we can do actively more to make that even better. And we can do the same thing with psychedelics, who we're training, how they're getting trained, how we're educating people about the opportunities for training, who decides what the training is. All of these things need to be taken into consideration in terms of how we're making these rules and how we're governing these ideas.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think great discussion again by the panelists. This is absolutely amazing. More women involved, more people of color involved. This is great trajectory. So I'm going to do something maybe a little different now. I can't recall earlier panels that went with this tradition, but one of the things about this particular panel is we're looking at the future and trying to discern what exactly is going on in this space. But some of you may still have some questions, about what exactly we're doing here with CryptoPsychedelic, which we've tried to elucidate. But we may also be looking into the future and trying to figure out what exactly is going to happen and what's going on. So I'd like to take this time to open up the questions from the audience, maybe one or two questions, and then we're going to have the closing statement by Matt as soon as we finish the question segment here. So without further ado, does anybody have any questions for our panelists?
AMA, let's do it.
Right at this gentleman right here. Is there a microphone?
Can
that
you
we
stand up?
That's cool, yeah. When's the next CryptoPsychedelic?
Don't, Matt, you can't announce the place yet. We gotta keep it secret.
Okay, so what I will say, I can
Just
give
say-
detailed. No, I can keep the details. So we obviously have had a massive success of this event. We've done little to no marketing, probably no marketing, just sharing it with people. And the people that have come here have actually made their way here because they saw the mission and the purpose, and they were like, whatever that is, I'm going to that, right? I'm figuring that out. Someone told me, they took me along. We did little to no marketing. So we could obviously have this blown up and do I like the actual personal, intimate nature of it. I really don't like large events because you don't get to know the people. Almost like a Burning Man camp, right? Community. But we do want to do them in magical places. So there are a lot of magical places. Tulum is a magical place, let's be honest here. And so we want to do them in other magical places. If you have ideas of what the magical place should be, I have a couple of them at least. Let us know, and we can do that. So, but yeah, there is a place in the Pacific that I believe would be a good place. So maybe October-ish.
Yeah, we're thinking fall, right?
Late, after Burning Man, late October. Yeah, sounds good.
That's exciting. This gentleman right here might have a question as well. We'll move
Question, comment.
question. And
Yeah, we're still we're very video that explain the mind. So I have this idea of creating, I have just published a book of psychotherapy and research. I translated it into English, and I have
Right.
this idea of
So-
doing a blockchain ebook.
So we'll mention your project. Yeah, so he's doing a blockchain ebook. We're going to use the technology to create a digital object for his ebook so that it can be funded and translated. And what's the name of it again specifically so I don't make... What is it?
Psychedelic.
Psychotherapy and
on
research. Yeah.
So lots of...
And
And if we're doing shout outs, you should all download Guardian Circle.
There we go.
You want to protect the people you love, and you want to be a part of a collective that actually incentivizes caring for people,
Let's do that.
do it.
Exactly. So any other questions?
yeah, maybe another right here.
So I see there being a real danger of a crypto dystopia. I think cryptocurrencies have a significant potential to collapse government tax revenues. It's going to make it very difficult for governments to tax income or wealth. It will be trivially easy for people to store their wealth in anonymous cryptocurrencies. If that happens and we end up with a stateless government, well, some people will be happy about that, it seems. But I think governments are important. I think they have a really important role to play in society.
Retaliatory legislation.
And if that happens, we may be left with a very small number of people who own a lot of cryptocurrency and a lot of other people who never got in on this game, who are now left in this stateless world with also no tradable value token.
Yeah.
So how realistic a possibility is it in
I'm happy to take the first part of this question. So yeah, dystopian, the view of creating mass amounts of wealth in one very small percentage of the population, kind of like what we have now, I think, right? Inequality. So yeah, that is a threat. We don't want that. One of the things that I would say is that governance, we need to kind of look at the state as a monopoly provider of governance services in a lot of senses. They're legitimate services. We need governance services within society. We need identity. We need proper registration. We need dispute resolution. We need enforcement. We need all of these things. These are legitimate services within the economy. We have a monopoly provider on many of them. And I use the DMV as anyone that's in the United States. Anyone that's gone to the DMV sucks. It's not a great provider of services. It's the worst. It's actually the worst, right? You have to wait in there for a long time. But if you had a private solution to that was competing for your identity services, it would be far superior. We understand this from that. So what I would say is that within this blockchain-based system, we absolutely will have competing governance services for the best way to serve you in your governance protocols that needs very, very, very soon.
But I would argue that the fight for that would create the dystopia that we're talking about, quite possibly. And the people who are already the people who are already disenfranchised are going to be further disenfranchised and harmed.
How would they be harmed by providing the most scalable governance solutions to people that have never had them before?
Because they already don't have access.
So you're saying that being able to provide entrepreneurship to provide the most amount of services would harm the people that don't have services yet?
No, not necessarily.
Right.
But in a
I think it's important to consider worst case scenarios.
But I think a dystopian view of providing entrepreneurial services to identity, where the first time in the world that 3 to 4 billion people on the planet don't have an identity service, they don't have it. It doesn't exist for their government. Their government is inept or corrupt or doesn't provide it. And you say, come to our station. We will give you an identity on the blockchain. We will be able to you will be able to do business and provide liquidity.
Should we first ask them if they want it?
They want to enter the world financial system? Do we want to ask
I think
them
it's,
if
I
they want to
think
be
I
able
think
to
you
trade
need
with
to
each
ask.
other?
I'm not saying that. I'm saying you first ask them.
I feel like
I think
So the
I
community
personally think it's
development-
very weird that Mark Zuckerberg wants to rain the internet down all over places on the world. I think that there's unintended consequences of doing that, and I think it's very important to ask those people if they want that.
Yeah, and I think
we need to at least ask that, because
If I
if
could
we
just-
don't, we're gonna keep doing all these other things.
This has happened before.
So
If I could just cut in for 1 second. I'm not anti-governance. I'm not, decentralized everything. I think it's great to have an identity. I think it's great to have a state when it works for you. I think unfortunately right now we have a military budget, at least in the United States, that is explosive and predatory. I mean, frankly, a lot of the budget goes to centralized systems that don't work, that don't serve anyone, where you're selling water in Afghanistan for 8 times the price. And then actually, what I actually discovered through Rick was that you spend 3 times more on aftercare for the military than you do on the military operations to go in. So it's like a quadruple whammy. And so what I'm working against is the pervasive part of the system where it's not working for you. When it works for you, that's great. If you have to go to Estonia and have a digital identity, that's fine. That's fine with me. I don't think we have to go there. I just think we need more accountability in the systems that we do have. And to do that, I think to segregate it out into, okay, you're on a humanitarian mission. What are you actually accomplishing? I was a Peace Corps volunteer. I worked in the developing world for 15 years, and I will tell you that the needs and what is provided are never met, because by the time you send in the report, the needs have changed. This is where decentralization will change the game completely. When you go to Haiti and you have the Red Cross go in, half of it is waste, not on purpose, not because they intend to do bad, but because the needs are not being met in a timely, proximal manner. This is where blockchain could change things completely. And so I would say, rather than working against forces, keep the forces that we have that we kind of need. It's hard to be identityless, stateless, bankless, but use the things that we can use to make the services that we need work better, to make the systems that we need work better, and to supplant the ones that are obviously not working for us.
I agree.
Yeah. And to say too that, maybe an environment of fierce competition isn't going to be the most beneficial thing for things like securing our identity. Maybe a collaborative, system is going to be something that's much stronger, because it's not coming from vying for the value of that information. It's coming from wanting to protect that for everyone. And I think that's where maybe psychedelics can come in. That's where maybe psychedelics can come in, as we've been talking about. We were just talking about in the last panel, there's the bull and the bear in the blockchain ecosystem right now, and maybe we need a little more heart in there.
There we go. Yeah, I mean,
I would say we need the bee.
The bee?
The
Ooh,
bee.
the
Okay,
bee.
so they just had this study in London, which is the Queen Mary Institute, showed that actually bees, which have a brain the size of a sesame seed and are not considered that capable of learning, out of 60 bees, if one of them was able to develop a skill, they could then teach the other bees that sometimes could even riff on it and do it better. So I would say, right now we need to be evolving ourselves. As a culture, we have the capability to do better, and not all of us can see it right away, but we have that kernel where if one of us can do it and we can communicate it to somebody else, we can have a bee phenomenon, which is just, how do we do things better? Well, somebody has to get that negative nugget of knowledge and pass it around. And I feel like this is where we are with blockchain. Some of this is a nugget of knowledge that needs to be spread.
absolutely.
And if we do spread it, then, we will evolve ourselves into something better.
We incentivize that. We build those on open source systems. As soon as someone learns how to do something, the entire collective has it, right?
Yeah.
It's an open source system.
this is the first time.
Yeah, first time. And that's the same with psychedelics. We kind of have a collective consciousness in that sense. And these open source systems do the same thing. And they do them for all kinds of different systems, as we were discussing before.
Right, and that's part of why, Rick and I, as a member of the MAPS staff, think it's important that MAPS and the work that MAPS is doing is nonprofit. It's not for profit. And if there is a profit aspect to it, like we have with the public benefit corporation and the actual sale of MDMA once it's able to be marketed, that it's not just based on the fiduciary responsibility to the stakeholders, that there's built into the system social benefit and ethics of how that's carried out. And we're not really seeing the benefit corp model in the blockchain space very much.
Absolutely we are. I disagree
And I'd like to see
wholeheartedly.
more.
I
I'd
disagree
like to see
wholeheartedly.
more. She's throwing
I
it
think
down,
that
man.
most of the actual blockchain, specifically Matt McGraw is sitting right there. The Bureau is a benefit corp. But no, and I will fight back ferociously against that concept. Impact in the blockchain space is the most important thing. The most important applications of the blockchain are not about making money or 10xing your returns. They're about investing in systems which provide services to people that have never. If you buy a token, and this is the example that I continue to use, if you buy a token that is building decentralized energy grids in Haiti, Impact PPA, which is our client, whatever, but, right? But if you buy that and it goes up and then it goes down by 25%, you're like, oh, bummer, but I built decentralized energy systems for people that have never had them. Yay!
Exactly.
Doesn't matter it went down by 25%. If you buy a protocol token that everyone told you to buy because it was in Forbes once, and it goes up 10x and then it goes down by 75%, you're like, well, shit, I shouldn't have bought that. And then the coin may not even do anything. So impact projects and access and those things. And then the other thing that's really important, and this is a thing that Brock Pierce and EOS and people talk about a lot, is that decentralized autonomous organizations or decentralized autonomous corporations, if you want to even use the legacy language there, actually align incentives for the new organizational structures of the world, okay? So if we take Uber, and they usually have a nice projector thing, and I'm going to do this in your minds, I'm going to implant this in your minds. You take Uber, for example, as an organization. You have the investors who want to maximize their profit, right? You have the drivers who want the most amount of money and the short amount of time driving. And then you have the users who want the best user experience for the least amount of money. Those organization structures are they're at odds with each other. The modern corporate model of how we do business is literally at odds. It doesn't align in structures. But if you have a decentralized autonomous organization, you have the investors who put the money into the beginning at the first, and they want the value of the token to go up. They want the network to grow. You have the users, the value creators that are actually using the system, and they want the value of the network to grow. And they're going to get more money when the value of the token goes up. And then you have the people that are value extractors that are using the service, and they want the best possible product. And the only way that the best possible product can be delivered is by this network growing and getting more people into it. So we're seeing a kind of a societal reformation of using this legacy corporation thing that was invented 100 years ago that didn't work very well because it doesn't align incentives, right? And now we have public benefit corps, which are kind of like the legacy way of trying to do that in some way. But now we have a new formation, a DAO formation, that can align those incentives to do that. So I think it's a really important.
I just want to say I think you made a super important point, which is that if you put your money where your meaning is, you don't care if you lose something because you've done what you wanted to do anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So this is what you call visioning the future with psychedelics and blockchain. Awesome. I hope the question about dystopia got lost in the mix there. It got answered, I believe, at some juncture of that conversation. So I think maybe one small short question, and then we'll have to start wrapping things up.
Closing, question and closing.
Yeah,
remarks.
one
I
small.
just have a little thing at the end that I want to say, and that's it.
So the lady back here in the back with a question. Hello.
You're right. You're creating it right now. So I mean, she hasn't been talking, but
and what I think, what we were talking about is going forward. We want to bring stakeholders into these conversations.
So I threw it down as a challenge because I think it's something that needs to be done, and I've talked to Rick about it, and he wants to keep it in the benefit corporation because obviously in that way you can make sure that there is no speculative interest at heart, that it never gets distorted in any way. But I mean, from the background where I come from, where my life was literally saved by psychedelics, I think that there's just too many people suffering to take as long as it might take as a benefit corporation. So I love Rick deeply, and I would like to fund him deeper. So for that, I think that actually, a crypto fund for psychedelics would be something that's smart, because there is a way that we could make money doing it, but it would be ultimately making something good in the world happen. And if it doesn't make any money, it's precisely what I was saying before. If you put your money where your meaning is, it doesn't really matter if it doesn't work. Then it's just a gift that you gave to the world. But it could help it happen faster.
Yeah.
I mean, Pineapple Fund used the profits that they made off crypto to give it to MAPS. I would say to the degree that we can partner with MAPS and make an ICO where everybody who cares about psychedelic healing just puts in whatever they think is worth it for them to make sure that the kind of research that needs to happen happens. I mean, you're still 7 million short of the goal for PTSD, for MDMA for PTSD as a breakthrough therapy. Yeah. So we went through all the hurdles with the FDA. It's been years, decades coming. And actually, at the end of the day, there's still not enough money. That's absurd.
And that's just for the FDA.
It needs to be changed.
That's just for the FDA.
It's just
that's
for the FDA. Exactly.
That's not for EMA. That's not for South America. That's not for Africa. That's not for Australia. That's not for Asia.
I know.
And so there's so much more still to go. And so, our next goal is meeting this $26 million match, of which we have 7 million more to go. But beyond that, there's still a vast future for research with these substances and how they can be applied into the world.
Yeah, and there's a massive funding gap. So if we can help fill that gap, let's do it.
It's double. Whatever you donate is double.
Yeah,
actually, 'cause the
and
Pineapple
it's tax
Fund goes up,
deductible.
and
You
tax
don't have to pay
deductible.
capital gains.
There you go.
So I think we're running out of time now. Please give it up for the panel. This was awesome. Great discussion.
Good job.
Great
Well done.
discussion.
Well done, guys.
If you guys don't mind hanging around for just a few minutes, Matt's going to have the closing talk.
Yeah, I'll
too,
just gonna say a couple things. Not a big deal. So I want to thank everyone for coming. This is amazing. This was originally envisioned, I think I said to many people, as the crypto psychedelic 1 billion seconds party to make MDMA legal again, which I think we have kind of touched on the thing, because we wanted to just throw, I wanted to do my 1 billion seconds party as a benefit to MAPS to make MDMA legal. So that was, and we had a fake poster that was supposedly signed by Sasha Solgan that was a pharmaceutical poster that was like, do you suffer from anxiety and depression, and would you like to cure that? Try MDMA, right? and do that. But so one thing that I want to say is that we were struggling to understand how we would represent 1 billion for this event. Because 1 billion grains of sand is a lot of money, or a lot of sand. 1 billion. I always went to like the chemistry, like Avogadro's number, like 6.02 times 10 to the 23rd, whatever the fuck it was. But there's too many things. So, but I heard something the past year that I really like and enjoy is that we want to redefine what the definition of a billionaire is. So the definition of a billionaire that everyone thinks is that like it's someone with $1 billion or more, right? That's kind of boring. It's not really. Did you earn that $1 billion? Maybe not, right? So you have that billion. So I want to redefine the definition of a billionaire to be someone that has a positive impact on 1 billion people or more in society, right? And so therefore, you're all fucking billionaires, right? We're all having a positive impact on 1 billion. So that's how we're representing 1 billion for the Billion Seconds Party. And I just wanted to say thank you, and then let's go into the Billion Seconds Party.
Yeah. Crypto Psychedelic, everybody.